Hello, and welcome to the third and final conversation series of our first inaugural Brooklyn Fine Art Print Fair. Thank you very much. My name is Luther Davis. I'm the print shop director here at Powerhouse Arts, and I'm so proud to introduce you our friends at Poster House, Nicholas Lowry and Angelina Lippert. And I want to just say that what's that? Oh, you're Swann. Yes, you're at Swann. I was actually going to have you get the specifics of your, yes. You're at Swann, and you're the director of Poster House. Are you ready to rock? I don't think you're ready to rock. Are you ready to rock? All right, that's what I wanted to hear. I had, when I was 26 at Southern Graphics Council in West Virginia, Dave Hickey was a keynote speaker, and he started our talk. 3 times this crowd of Are You Ready to Rock? And then he proceeded to tell all these professors and students that they had lost the art of print because they had lost their mercantile ways. And there were professors in the crowd booing, there were students clapping, and I this whole time thought printmaking was avoiding gouging yourself with a knife and getting acid in your eye. I didn't realize that there was a scope beyond the mechanics, right? And that there was a message behind everything. And I was, this was my first real wake-up call to there were real hard feelings about graphic arts. And I'm so proud, in this corner,
representing the mercantile side in this corner, straight from the hallowed halls of Swann Auction Galleries in Manhattan, I am here to take a much broader and much more commercial view of what a poster is than my esteemed colleague, Angelina Lippert, who comes from academia.
And in this corner.
Well, he did just introduce me, but yeah, Angelina Lippert, hailing from Poster House, the first and only museum in the country dedicated to posters. And what Nico failed to mention is that I started in the commercial world and made my way into academia.
And we watched her progress from an open-minded, wonderful merchant to a closed-minded academic. And over the course of the pandemic, as Angelina and I were doing podcasts and Instagram live stories about posters, it played out that apparently, in her new role as curator, she had a very different role, a very different idea of what a poster actually was than I did, simply as someone trying to sell art to the public. So that was the genesis of this battle royale. And it really isn't a battle because Angelina has lost before it's even begun, frankly.
That remains to be seen. I'm just saying, I think we will be polling the crowd partially sometimes throughout this chat because I think I win in many cases, even though I am more hardlined about certain ideas.
I just want to stack my bona fides here and say, at Swann Galleries, I run and direct the vintage poster department, which I've been working on for 30 years. I have taken that expertise onto national television with the PBS TV show The Antiques Roadshow, which I've been doing for 29 years. I've written books, I've done movies, all about graphic arts and posters. So when I tell you what a poster is, don't listen to anybody else.
You wrote a book for me.
Excuse me?
The book you wrote was for Poster House.
No, other books as well.
What other books?
I'll tell you later.
Oh, well. I feel like I've won there then. But no, I've been a poster historian for 20 years, so I'm not as old as Nico, but that should not be held against me. I have studied it academically for that entire period of time, and I'm getting a PhD in posters. So,
What we're going to do tonight is walk you through a number of different kinds of printed material that we have amassed from various archives. We will explain what they are. We will opine on them as to their printness or their posterness. The one thing that I do want you to keep in mind throughout this entire physically painful debate that we're about to have is that either print or poster, these are both very collectible forms of art. So what we're having now is an aesthetic conversation, not a market conversation. All of these things, and we may touch on value at some point, but this is not to belittle in any way the importance or the value of the work. It is simply to pigeonhole their identity. It's like identity politics in the printmaking studio.
Indeed. And I don't hate prints. I love prints. I wouldn't be here if I didn't love prints. But I have very specific rules about a poster because people email us all the time being like, why didn't you include this in the exhibition? Why don't you collect this? And so I've had to explain the general definition of a poster to many people many times. And these first two images kind of dovetail on that. But before we begin, my definition of a poster, which the museum espouses because I run it, is a poster is a public-facing notice meant to persuade that marries word and image. If it doesn't fit those three categories, it's not a poster. So public-facing, it better be on the streets. If it's something that is meant to be saved and collected and hung in your home, it's a print. It's wonderful, but it's not a poster. Meant to persuade. A poster has to be asking you to do something, vote for someone, attend a rally, buy something, attend an event. If it's live, laugh, love, not a poster.
Which is definitely telling you to do something.
Well, no, it's inspiring you. It's not telling you. It's not asking you to do something as a means of persuasion. Live, laugh, love is just like live, laugh, love.
Let's begin the battle.
I might start keeping score if people want me. But and then that marries word and image. So posters begin in the 1870s when Jules Cheret, who we have posters of later, perfected the already existing art of color lithography so that posters could be made cheaply and quickly. The cheaply and quickly is kind of what he figured out, as opposed to the beautiful fine art chromolithography that had been done up until that point. Prior to that, these types of things were broadsides. Broadsides, there's no image there. There isn't that ability to understand what's going on unless you can read. There's like that opening in the middle there, that's where we would have a tip-on. A tip-on is like a separately printed image usually. So like of a shoe, if the text was advertising a shoe store, you would have like a tip-on of a shoe.
So for example, on your left side is a broadside from 1862, from New Hampshire, encouraging men to enlist in the Union Army to fight the Civil War. Come forward immediately and swell the ranks of the Union Army. It's a very wonderful phrase. I would say, categorically, that this is a poster.
It's a broadside.
Is a broadside a poster?
No.
And what
Doesn't
is the
marry
difference?
word and image. Does not marry word and image. This is just text.
But this is your definition.
Well, no, it's a pretty standardized definition.
That you came up with.
I perfected it. Like Cheret, I perfected it. This
I see.
definition still existed prior to me. I didn't like ideate this, but no, the idea that a poster is it's commercial to begin with, but the idea that it has to have an image with it is pretty important to when it begins. If not, you could say a poster began in like Pompeii. With signage, like with
I got it. I was just trying to think what they would have printed on. They would have chiseled it into walls.
Yeah, I mean, like, are you saying that it can be printed on a substrate other than paper at that point?
I would say you can have a poster on something that's not rock. Bark could be a poster.
How is that a printed multiple?
We're getting off the track here. We don't have any pictures of bark posters, unfortunately, which would very well serve my point. From broadsides. We have a couple of other examples, but not just a broadside. On your right side is...
Who's right? That right?
They're
They're both handbills. A handbill is like something that, like, it sounds exactly like what it sounds like. It's handed out to you. That is not a poster. And the reason I decide that that's not a poster is that the intended audience is very different. The relationship between the viewer and the object is different than a poster. When you're walking down the street and you see a poster on like a post-no-bills wall, it is about the idea that thousands, if not millions of people can walk by that and experience it equally. And if it doesn't make its point in under a second, it has failed. A handbill implies that you're taking something that's expecting a one-on-one relationship between the viewer and the object. You have a connection that's more than a second. You've taken it, you've already established a relationship between you and that object.
So
and that
size
information.
really matters.
Size, it could be a small poster. Size doesn't always matter.
So how is a handbill not a small poster?
It's the method of display. How it is used, the functionality of the object also implies.
It's forward-facing.
Yes, but it's not street-facing. The functionality between the viewer and the object is different at that point. Like a magazine ad is not a poster, it's the right same size.
It's a tenuous description because you're handed a flyer on the street, but that's okay.
You're handed a handbill on the street. A flyer is posted to a telephone pole or on a wall.
At the turn of the century, the poster craze, I'm just moving, I have nothing to say. Turn of the century, the poster craze was gripping Europe in the 1890s, and one of the first and most important poster dealers was Ed Sagot, who ran a gallery and had posters printed in Paris. This piece is a
handbill.
It is not a poster, and yet anybody who collects posters will identify this as a poster image.
Well, it's advertising somebody who sold posters and prints, was primarily and first a print dealer. He became a poster dealer later. I mean, I own one of these, actually. They're quite common. You'll see them everywhere. I love this image because it's all these people scrambling to get into the gallery to see the latest posters and prints that Sagot would be selling.
What you can't tell from the slide is it is very small. It's
like
probably smaller than 5 by 7.
Quite tiny. But yeah, it's a handbill. It's not a poster. It's just advertising somebody who happens to sell posters and prints.
So just for everybody's clarity then, if it's not a poster, it's a handbill. Is it a print?
This is a print.
So it's a print and a handbill, but
Yes.
not a handbill and a
Well,
poster.
all of these things are prints in that, like in the umbrella of printing. They are. But Poster House is technically a printing museum as well as a design museum, and the history of posters is the history of printing. But in the subcategories, this is a handbill.
To muddy the waters, Sagot, as a print dealer and a poster dealer, also commissioned a lot of prints to be made. This is probably one of the most famous, it's hard to say, many of them are very famous, by an artist named George Bottini. Either one of these a handbill?
No, both of these are prints, although they're slightly different prints because they have you'll see the one on the right has something really cool in the lower right corner. That's a remark, spelled with a Q-U-E. And remarks are these amazing, like, they're just kind of like nods or jokes or little Easter eggs that people who were designing prints would add in the printing process. So I like posters by Toulouse-Lautrec where there are ones that have remarks on them, and those were like the ones that went through the press that he would then give to his friends. So sometimes you'll see like there's the very famous Revue Blanche poster of a woman ice skating, and there are some that were printed that have a little mini version of her in the corner, and that was for friends and family. It's like the little, like, it's not an artist proof, but it's just like a funny Easter egg that they would put on these things. And some collectors value these more because they're rare. There are only a few ever printed of them. But I love a remark. I think that they are not print specific. They can be on posters too. I just think they're great.
I was under the impression that a remark was done to the etched plate before the plate was run through to make sure the press was inked well enough before they used the paper to print the entire print. Can anybody corroborate that for me? Does anybody know anything about printing?
I have never heard that. No, I think that's...
No, you can't corroborate that? Can you decorroborate it like it's just wrong? Okay.
Also, no, but...
Right.
Thanks, Mike.
We've got, it's 2 to 1.
But that can't be true because in the Revue Blanche that I'm specifically thinking of, actually all the Lautrec posters that I'm thinking of that have a remark, it's on top, it's the topmost color, so it can't be under the poster.
I think it might be for etchings more than lithographs. It might be.
I know nothing about etchings. I don't do etching house, poster house.
Ed Sagot, as I said, also printed posters to advertise his business. This is a poster. It's actually often considered 2 posters because you frequently see it cut down the middle. Each of the women sold separately. But as you can see...
But was it used separately? When it was used on the streets, was it just that they were saving space and then like doing 2 posters at once and chopping them in half?
You know, I don't know. I think if they were hung together contemporarily, they've been cut in half so a dealer can sell twice as many pieces, would be my guess. This by Jacques Villon, who was a very famous printmaker. This is an etching that is probably 3 or 4 inches in diameter. It is neither, well, it's considered a business card, is what I've seen it referenced as, which I guess would be the same as a handbill. What's the difference between a business card and a handbill?
I'm not a business card historian. I have no idea. But I mean, I guess it comes from the handbill, or actually really probably comes from the visitor card. Ooh, this. So I love this poster. This poster is 7.5, 8 feet tall. It's amazing. It's 2 sheets of paper. You can't see it here, but there's a line through her middle showing where the 2 pieces of paper come together. The Poster House has in our hallway going downstairs the progressive proof of this object. The progressive proof is each individual color printed separately. It was basically only one would ever have been done. It's the test that the printer does to make sure everything aligns correctly and everything is properly inked. And then they would all be combined in the end to create this design. But what I find really interesting on a historic level about this design, yes, it's by Jules Cheret, so that's the father of the poster. But more importantly, it's advertising Sagot, so the father of the guy who's made the poster market a thing. So you've got like double poster nerdiness in one object. But it's a rejected poster as well, which I think is really cool. So Cheret made this for a department store. And then the department store was like, meh, don't like it. And Sagot saw that. He was like, hey, I'll take your rejected design and use it to advertise my gallery. And I think it's quite successful. But it also shows that Cheret at that time, this is that moment in posters where the advertising image is not specific to the thing being advertised. It could be, Cheret was the king of using the same redhead to advertise everything. Whether it was a department store, a flower show, or a gallery, she would be there just looking cute. And only later did it get more specific.
He was actually the first person to associate beautiful young women with advertising, and he was awarded a Legion of Honor for his contribution. Seriously, he was not specifically for that, but the overall result of that would be a great Legion of Honor. What did you get that for?
Hot girls.
His contribution to advertising is what he got the Legion of Honor for.
Yeah, I have not heard that, but I believe that.
Yet another one of the posters from the Sagot series, this by Paul Helieu, who was a printmaker. So again, you have this incredible association that Angelina was talking about, where a printmaker is designing, the image that a printmaker used was put on a poster for a print and poster dealer in Paris. But technically, this one is a poster.
It is, although I really don't like it. I think it's a pretty meh poster in the grand scheme of things.
All right, moving on to the next category now. One of the things that happened a lot in turn-of-the-century France, as posters became more and more popular, and there was a secondary market in posters, people like Sagot would be selling them, the printers realized that there was an untapped market, and if they could get their stable of artists to design images, they could print them and sell them as what we now call decorative panels. And a decorative panel, arguably, to Angelina's point, is a very nice way of saying print, because a decorative panel doesn't advertise anything.
But they're typically by poster artists. So it's like saying, like, if I was really well known for the posters I made, but somebody didn't want the ad copy, they could be like, hey, can you do your thing? Do that thing that you're really good at, but just don't advertise anything. Just make a really cool image. That's what something like this is.
This one by Paul Berthon. But then Paul Berthon also designed posters. So on this side here, we have a poster that's advertising a book, and then using a very similar image on your left side. I don't know if you can see down in the lower right-hand corner there, it is signed and numbered. And I think immediately, beyond debate, once you have something that's signed and numbered, it is clearly a print and not a poster.
Absolutely. I love this one. So obviously the Salon de Sens is advertising an event, and then the before letters version is what we in the industry call, it's also the version without the ad copy is on the right. Now how this would work is someone like Sagot would go to the printer, not the artist. They would go to the printer and they would say, okay, next time Cheret or whomever makes a poster, give me 10 of the poster itself and give me 5 of the poster, but just don't print the letters, the text on it. Because not every person who collected posters wanted the ad copy. Sometimes somebody in the print who was a print collector would want something that wasn't as commercial. So something like that would be for the person who just can't really get their mind around having an advertisement in their collection or on their walls. They are typically, in most cases, around, like, it doesn't actually affect the value unless one is like much rarer than the other or much more in demand. But generally, these two are actually about the same price.
In this particular case, I'm just going to add slightly to what you said. They also did limited edition. So the one here without text is signed and numbered as well by Pierre Bonnard.
Yes, but it would be the exact same version as the Before Letters version. They didn't do a secondary edition.
It might have been on better paper.
Better paper is a different thing. That's the other thing. A lot of poster dealers would ask the printer to print stuff on weird substrates to show off, either to have stuff that people would collect at a higher price point, or if the printer did it themselves, to show off their printing skills. So somebody like Champenois, which was a very famous printer, would often print stuff on silk or on vellum, because if you can print it on silk and show all that detail, damn, your printing is fine. And that today commands a slightly higher value in many cases, because they're really, really rare. But those were like the corporate gift you'd send out to your best client, being like, look, we created this gorgeous thing for you. Like these when I've seen these printed on like 5 different types of paper. There's like the shitty poster paper, the regular paper.
I'm back up 1 second. These are the works of Alphonse Mucha, a Czech artist who had moved to Paris and basically single-handedly created and defined the Art Nouveau movement.
Yes.
His posters were so incredibly popular. He did theatrical images for Sarah Bernhardt. He did some products. And as I mentioned just for the previous slide, his work was so sought after and his style was so beloved that his printer, Champenois, decided to use him to create decorative images that he could then sell to the public. So this is one of 3 separate 4-image series that Mucha did defining the seasons. So you have spring, autumn, winter, and fall. And people would buy these. It was
summer. Spring, summer, winter, and fall.
Not summer, winter, and fall. Thank you.
Not autumn and fall.
Well, I don't know where you live. Spring, summer, winter, fall. Thank you. For our next confrontation, we will have a battle of the seasons, which apparently I will lose right off the bat. Substantially less expensive than oil paintings. People could buy these and decorate their homes at a time when the possibility of having color art in your home had historically and previously been almost unattainable at the normal and average level. So these things were enormously popular, and they were printed, nobody knows. So again, it would be hard-pressed to call these posters. I would call them decorative panels, as the trade calls them. They are all under the umbrella of prints, but unlike a print, these were not numbered.
No, these aren't that kind of thing, and they're also used in many different.
These aren't that kind of thing.
These are not that kind of thing.
Carry on.
They're also used they were printed on so many different materials that there would be no point in signing and numbering them, because this was more of a commercial effort. It's like when Martha Stewart gets a chic collab with Target. It's like Champenois really milked the Mucha. They were decorative panels, and they're about this size, actually. That's fairly true to life. Maybe a little smaller, but they were printed on fabric for curtains, on upholstery fabric, on decorative screens for your home. They were also licensed out to other printers. There is a version of her, the second one from the left, advertising an automobile show in Buffalo, New York. And the printing of it is shit compared to the one that Champenois did, because Champenois was a really high-end printer, and when you start licensing out your IP, the quality goes down. They were printed as postcards. They were printed as menu designs. Because Mucha was just such an iconic designer at the time. He, like Nico said, he essentially brought Art Nouveau to the masses. The way that these things functioned was beyond print. They were IP. They were commercial material to be used.
Like a poster.
Well, and as posters.
So Mucha also designed books, This is a plate from one of the books he designed called
Lippert.
And if you can imagine a book size, so probably 9.5 by 8.5 by 11, maybe slightly larger than that. These are all lithographs. They are very collected, but they are, I would say, categorically, they are prints, not posters.
They're
Printed.
pages in a book. I mean, that is even further out of the print realm for me, because you're someone that's chopping up a book to save these. Like, I'm very against the chopping up of books.
You were the one who put this slide in here. I didn't.
Well, because I wanted to show that they did a range of things.
So again, Mucha's art was so beloved. These are images. What are these called? Are these the Byzantine heads?
Byzantine heads.
Byzantine heads. There were two heads. There was a redhead and a brunette. This is just two usages of the brunette. The one closest to me.
This is the redhead.
The redhead. Autumn, fall, redhead, brunette. It's fine. The one closest to me is a calendar. So does that make it separate from a print or a poster?
Calendars are really interesting. So particularly Mucha's imagery is on a lot of calendars, and how these calendars functioned was the idea that a company would give these out at the beginning of the year, as you would imagine, and then they would hang in your place of work or home or whatever for a full year. And that image would be up in that place as an ad for that company for a full year. The calendar would, the calendarium at the bottom there is not a tear off, it's a tip on of literally printed typeface. That's all the days of the week. And there are corresponding saint days, because France is a very Catholic country at this point in time. And that would be more of an ad than this, although this version does not tell me the company. If it told me the company, I could say that it is poster adjacent, because there is no corporate affiliation with that. It functions more like a print.
So it's poster adjacent, but functions more like a print.
Yes.
We'll move on to the next category now. That leaves me speechless. Alphonse Mucha, again, his popularity showed in different places. These are two of his very famous posters that were designed, one for a beer company and one, the one closest to me is just a great image for rolling paper, when people rolled their own cigarettes. And the sort of decorative smoke wafting behind the woman's head is one of the great graphic conceits of the era. And these posters exist in very large formats, almost the size they appear in front of you. But these particular images, as you can see in the bottom left hand of each of the images, come from a series called the Maîtres de l'Affiche, the Masters of the Poster, which was done between 1896 and 1900 for people who loved posters so much, but didn't have the room or the ability to safely store or house them. These were printed again about this format.
As a book.
As well, no, they came as a portfolio, as individual sleeves. The books were put together later.
Okay.
So they came in fascicles? Fascicles? Fascicles. They came in fascicles. Every month you would get a
shipment.
A shipment, like a folder, a sleeve with 4 or 5 of these in them. So these are prints of posters.
They are prints of posters, and they're miniature. And I would even say that they're a little bit distant from that as well, because a lot of people collect these as like, oh, it's a real Mucha. It's not a real Mucha, because Charest was the guy behind the Maîtres de l'Affiche set. So you have a poster guy who also owned a printing house. And how they made these prints, they didn't have Mucha redesign it. They basically took a photograph, essentially, and miniaturized it. So the distance between the artist and the object is you're 2 away at this point. So I would not view that as an original Mucha. I view that as somebody who was real good at copying Mucha.
Right. The question isn't whether it's an original Mucha, it's whether it's a print or a poster.
Well, definitely a print. It's a print. It's a print.
It wasn't just the French who were getting into the print game and the poster game. Peter Behrens, very famous German artist, became an industrialist, industrial designer, and an architect. This was an image that he designed for one of the very fancy and expensive German art magazines called Pan, which existed in the late 1890s. The image closest to me is the image that actually appeared in the magazine and became so popular that shortly thereafter they released a slightly larger print. I mean, I have no issue here. They're both
Yeah,
they're both prints.
They're both
But
prints. Well, they're both prints. I would say they're both prints. I allow it.
Joseph Sattler also designed prints for Pan. This one, however, although it appeared in the magazine, also appeared on the street, forward-facing, combining word and image to help sell the magazine.
That version would be the poster.
You looking at it,
I have no way of knowing that. How do you actually tell the difference between the two when they come to Swann?
the difference is one of size and also who the printer is.
Okay.
So that's how, because size really matters.
Doesn't matter.
Back to Mucha here.
Well, I think this is really interesting. Okay, so on the one on my side is it's a 2-sheet poster, so it's printed in 2 separate sheets. The image at the top is of the cellist, and the image at the bottom is the advertising copy. Because they're printed on 2 separate sheets of paper, you'll often find just the image like comes up for sale or is on display. Does it become a print when you remove the ad copy, even though it's from the same run as the poster? I would say it's just half a poster because it's from the original run of the poster. It's just had the ad copy not included.
So it's not even a poster, it's just half a poster.
It's half a poster. It's not but in the umbrella of print, but 'tis half poster.
But it's not selling anything.
Well, in the original, it is meant to. It is just lacking the thing that it's meant to be included with. No?
Never end a sentence with a preposition. Angelina's been talking a lot about Jules Cheret, who was basically the father of modern lithography and the inventor of great color lithography. This is maybe one of his most famous posters. One of the reasons, perhaps, is it appeared on the cover of the first catalogue raisonné of his works that was published in the 1980s, so a lot of people became familiar with it. The poster, well, this is fascinating, and I have no idea what you're going to say about this. The most frequently seen version of the poster is the one without text. It is seen so frequently without text that when it appears at auction with text, it sells for substantially more money because it's so rare. The thing is, and this is going to be a little unsatisfying because I don't have a great historical answer for you, it appears, we believe, we are led to believe, we think, that this never existed as a poster, but some savvy French poster dealer found a large roll of these posters, and if that sounds weird, these printing houses would print these posters and they would store them in their basements. And in the 1960s and 70s and 80s, poster dealers would go into the basements of printing houses and literally find rolls of 50 to 100 copies of the same image. As the story goes, a huge roll of these was found, and an enterprising French dealer overprinted them with text that wasn't original.
Yeah.
So in that case, it would be a fraudulent poster.
Yes, and what Nico described is actually not uncommon. Like we had a show of Art Deco posters a few years ago, and in it was an Italian poster where a dealer in the 1990s had printed, because it was not signed, had printed the name of a famous poster designer on the poster and then sold it to the American market because Americans were dumb, and sold it for more money than it was worth. So only the ones in American collections will have this artist's name on it, whereas all the ones in European archives have the original artist's name on it or no name at all, because the poster was so popular that it was printed in multiple editions. So the later ones don't have the original artist's signature. So I absolutely believe that story. It is not uncommon for dealers, particularly in the 80s and 90s, to do some tricky shit before we had Google. So I could absolutely see this happening, and it's actually super hard to tell whether or not something was printed over an old poster years later, unless you have a means of really not carbon dating the ink, but that's essentially what you would have to do. I mean, does it fluoresce? Is it an ink that you can tell is more contemporary than the poster? But I think this was originally done as a decorative panel. I do not think it was meant to be a poster. This version was meant to be the poster.
So this is another example. This one is completely kosher. The poster, as it appears closest to me, advertising a performance. And then, as we've been talking about all along, the printer found that the public was so enamored with the image and with the artist that they reprinted it without the text, without this sort of sullying advertising copy so that people can enjoy it basically as a lithographic painting in their home.
Yes.
I think I'm going to move a little bit quickly now. Just I don't know how we're doing for time, but it feels like you're talking a
Yeah,
lot.
we're talking a lot. We're hitting the end of the road.
Charest designed these specifically. It's a set of 4. They're the 4 muses, all the different arts. You have theater and music, dance, and I think comedy.
It's tragedy, comedy, theater, tragedy, comedy, music, and dance.
Very good. And these were based. We have 10 minutes left. We got a 10-minute sign. All right. It's like a boxing match. It's round 10. It is a boxing match, and we're at round 10. These were printed as decorative panels. Apparently, we have 10 minutes left, and the slide is soon enough.
Oh, I love this one because this one's so controversial. Right.
Go, run with it.
Wait. Looks like a poster, smells like a poster, acts like a poster, is no way.
Hang on, let me just bring you into this. So the artist on this is Adolphe Moron-Cassandre, where now we've leapt from the Art Nouveau era to the Art Deco era. This is circa, I think, 1928, 26.
28.
Cassandra really was a great master of Art Deco and machine age graphics go.
Yes, if you think of Art Deco graphics, you're probably thinking of Cassandra. Anyway, this thing looks like a poster, smells like a poster, acts like a poster, is absolutely not a poster. This poster, a maquette exists. He submitted it to a railway company. They said it's a little dark. He submitted to another railway company. They said, not really for us. He submitted to his rep over in England to see if he could sell it to the LMS. And they were like, nah, brah, this isn't for us. And so, because he had a good design, he believed in it, he printed it himself and sold it as a signed print for fans of him, because he had a fan club, because he was a big deal. Some unscrupulous dealers will chop off the bottom where Cassandra signed and numbered it and be like, it's the only known copy of the poster. If it's the only known copy of the poster, there would be some record that this thing existed, especially British Rail posters, that the records are so intense, you will always find another copy would have come up. It also has 2 punch holes in the top telling me that it absolutely was not listed as a poster. This was never a poster. It was meant to be a poster. It did not get actually published, and therefore it is just a print that is signed.
And yet, everybody in the trade would consider it a really wonderful train poster by Cassandra.
But it was never used.
Now, jumping into the modern age, we have a few more slides to go. These are posters for the Lincoln Center Film Festival, these by Liechtenstein. And the posters were actually used to advertise the film festival. Just by looking at it, do you have any idea which one of these is the actual poster?
Who thinks the one on Nico's side is the poster? Who thinks the one on my side is the poster? That is like 2% of the room answered the question. The one on Nico's side is the poster. If the Viralist print program still exists, they've stopped doing the actual functional advertising ones. We did a show on these a few years ago. The posters that were used in the subway are usually on normal paper. They aren't signed and numbered. This one is like on a metallic kind of mylar. It's quite beautiful. The next one's.
I was just going to say, in this particular instance, the price difference between the two is fairly large. The poster itself is a $1,500 or $2,000 poster. The print, which is from a very limited run of, I think, 200, is about $7,000 or $10,000. Andy Warhol also got into the game. We'll play this one quickly here. Which one is the poster and which one is the print? Who thinks the one closest to me is the poster? Who thinks the one closest to Angelina is the poster? You guys are right. The one closest to Angelina is the poster. The one that was not the poster is actually printed on acetate, so it's like a very hard plastic. You can see it's actually been cut out at the bottom by the ticket. Also, for some unknown reason, which I didn't realize until we were putting this presentation together, the print version seems to be misprinted because all the copies have the black text that says 5th New York overlapping film festival, which it doesn't in the print.
Yep.
Also, the price difference is very enormous.
It's astounding price difference.
All right, we've got a few more. Anybody in the room like Peter Max? Excellent answer.
Yeah,
Excellent answer. The biggest fan in the world of Peter Max is Peter Max himself. That's exactly right. That said, he did design some great posters, and this is sort of a tribute to the Art Nouveau legend Toulouse-Lautrec.
Not a poster. What's it advertising? What's it asking you to do? It's about a poster artist, but it is not poster.
But you can't see in the bottom right-hand corner there, it even says poster series. It's number 2
Yeah,
in his poster series.
you can call it whatever you want. It still isn't a poster. It's not advertising it. It didn't live on the streets.
Peter Max also designed this poster for Pan Am in 1969 when they began flying their 747s.
Is a poster. Was on the street. Have pictures.
Then we get to a period that some of you might remember from your earlier days. Some of you may not. The 1960s and 1970s. These are what I would call blacklight posters.
Or headshot posters, right?
Blacklight or headshot. More blacklight because, anyway.
I don't view these as posters. I think that a lot of people would, but they're decorative. They're things that you hang up in your dorm room or like if you're a kid, you hang up in your rec room or whatever. Like they are purely decorative. They aren't doing anything beyond that. So I would not put these in the poster category.
But you would put them in the print
I
category.
would totally put them in the print category.
But they're not signed and numbered like a print.
They don't need to be signed and numbered to be a print. That's just something that prints happen to have a lot of the time.
Just more examples of the head shop, and of course we have the whole psychedelic movement.
Now, these are tricky because with psychedelic posters, particularly like the Bill Graham stuff, you have the ones that were printed before the concert that like were on telephone poles and in record stores, posters. But they were so popular that they gave them out at the end of the concert, and then they also had many editions later that they would keep printing them, and then that becomes the print. So it's an image that functions in both worlds, and figuring out which printing you have is a labor of love. Like it's like look for the dot above the word ticket in the margin. If it's 2 inches away, it's a print. If it's 1 inch away, it's the original poster.
But bibliographical fine points, I wouldn't, don't worry yourself about that. These posters by Martin Sharp, in fact, only the one on closest to me is really a poster. Martin was the art director for Oz magazine, and the poster for Bob Dylan, to Angelina's point, I'm just making her point for her, I'm not agreeing with her, was not advertising anything or forward-facing, but there is nobody who does not consider that to be a psychedelic poster.
Other than me.
I just threw these in here simply because the psychedelic era did a big throwback to the Art Nouveau era, and we've seen the work of Alphonse Mucha, and these two posters here are directly taken from Alphonse Mucha's designs almost 90 years earlier, and sort of reinvented and recreated for these posters. The great thing about this is that Angelina said, I don't know a whole lot about the rock posters, so you talk about them, which means we'll just call them posters and move on.
Provided they're the first printing. Oh, this was in our environmental poster show, and it is maybe a poster. This was a moment when Olivetti, the typewriter company, they commissioned a bunch of famous artists to do these designs that would then be sold to raise money for environmental causes. So in this case, I do not believe that this is really a poster because it was created as a fundraising merch. It's not something that ever functioned in the wild. It was something that functioned as art in one's home.
It's funny. I think I just realized that the real difference is I would consider this a fine art poster.
Sure, okay, but it's a fine art.
I don't want to split hairs here, but you've been splitting hairs the entire hour. I would
but
call
it's
these
a
fine art
print.
posters.
Yeah, but it's a print.
It's a fine art poster.
Fine art print. Yes, row. Who's rowing? Row.
This is another poster from the environmental show. It's also a blacklight poster. Apparently, when you put it under a blacklight, it glows as if Porky Pig was actually radioactive. Is that correct?
Yes, it was the hottest postcard seller we've ever had. These two posters by the most prolific gig poster artist in the world, Mike King, who may be sitting in the front row right now.
Woo!
And who has a show opening at Poster House in a matter of weeks. These are two different things. These are both in the show. Which one is, actually, Mike, I forget. Are both of them posters, or is one of them a merch poster?
No, those are both posters.
Yes! Okay, so these are both actually posters. I was trying to remember if one of them was merch. So if it
The one on the right, just barely.
Just barely.
It's the kind of thing where a very small number of them did actually go up in windows and stuff like that, while
Oh, yeah.
that's like
All
hundreds of them on telephone poles everywhere.
Perfect. But the REM image was also used as merch at the concert, correct? No. No, it only ever functioned as a poster. Yes. Awesome. My show just got more legitimate. All posters all the time.
But it's also signed.
Well, that's because you signed it for us.
Did I?
Yeah.
It's got a number.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, it does. It's signed and numbered.
But
Your whole show's in the toilet.
But it's advertising. But it was used only as advertising. But you just said that they were only printed as advertising. So is this an overrun?
Yes, that's how I got paid.
Oh, so you would then sell the...
Yeah, I would make X number goes to the promoter. I keep the others and sell them after the fact.
So those would be prints. And then the ones that functioned are posters.
You see what she does? She gets under your skin. You want to punch her, right? You are now living the genesis of this entire fight. She does this thing. You're a poster designer. You design posters, and yet she will take you to task on this very simple aspect of your identity.
We've had this discussion.
We have.
I don't entirely agree with the bosses.
It's fine.
I'm with you there, Mike.
But you have a show.
Our last slide, Angelina.
Yes. Oh, okay. So here, Amos Kennedy, I just showing him when we reopened after COVID. Two different things going on here. The Rise poster is a poster. This was public facing. It is talking about an event, a protest. The one on the Nico's side, your right, is part of his Rosa Parks series, which is just, again, inspirational quotes or quotes affiliated with Rosa Parks. That is a print. It is sold as part of a print series. They are different things. They function
Sold
very
as part of a fine art poster series.
No. Amos would never say it's a fine art print series, like not at all. That is a print that he created as part of a series dedicated to Rosa Parks. But again, poster, print, separate, different, equally cool.
The point is equally cool, and as I said at the beginning, it is a semantic difference, but all of these things are great and collectible and wonderful art in their own right, regardless of which side of the printer poster divide you fall on. We hope you can appreciate these images. We hope you can appreciate listening to us babble about them as much as we enjoy telling you what we think. Thank you.
Are there any questions? They have answers.
No, they're all fleeing.
All right.
Sorry, they were dismissed at the bell, but there's so many questions.
I had a question. I guess to both of you, but I mean specifically to the academic. I mean, how do you feel that creating, like if the journey that we're all on is bringing this art form, to a higher profile. We're all curious about posters. We all have this passion about art, and I feel like our mission is to just share that with the world in a way as poster makers or people that are just aficionados or anything. So towards that end, how does creating these categories in your mind help with that mission? Like, because just from a class point of view, like growing up outside of Boston, Massachusetts, in my very middle-class suburban town, posters for us, which ignited my whole curiosity about art in a lot of ways, they were whatever was on our walls, and distinguishing like a print versus a poster was so beyond our passion, and like looking at early REM posters like Fables of the Reconstruction was why I'm a great, designer in a lot of ways. Like the craziness of my friend's concert poster could be next to a print. I'm just curious, like, how do you feel it helps this whole, because we're both passionate about it?
First of all, I love that question so much, I can't even tell you, and I cannot wait to hear her answer.
Wow. So I don't think that the distinction is, I think you may be interpreting my distinction as a value judgment. I don't think that it's a value judgment at all because, I mean, because they function very differently. But it's the nerdy thing, like somebody who is like a fine wine connoisseur, they're going to tell you that there's a difference between a Riesling and a Gruner Veltliner, and that like those differences are the end of the world for them. Whereas my mom is going to be like, it's a white wine. So I don't think that, but that doesn't mean that the person who thinks it's a white wine is wrong or bad or uneducated or not appreciating it. I think that the more nerdy you get and the more down a rabbit hole you get with any topic, allows you to focus on like minor distinctions that the normal person out there in the world wouldn't necessarily care about.
I should know this, as you know, but I didn't really fully understand the difference between the two Andy Warhols that you were pointing out.
The difference is, well, one was printed on paper to advertise the film festival. The other was a fine art print. It's printed on plastic, like acetate. So it's almost firm. You can barely roll it. It also had, it was die cut, so there were these two triangles in the ticket that were cut out, and it was printed in a limited run.
Yeah, the functionality, like the one that's supposed to appeared in the subway, like it actually was part of a run that was in the subway, whereas the other one was sold to benefit the Vera List print program at Lincoln Center.
Well, thank you for that. I'm going to close that question and questioning and point out that we have posters in the house, but they're not posters until you hang them up on the street. All right? So, and we encourage you to, because that's how we get our message out there. Always. And that is why Poster House is wheat pasting, teaching us all how to wheat paste today. Thank you so much.